This is a tutorial that shows the basics of rigging a Mini so that you can animate it in Talespire. I am starting here with the MZ4 250's Hydra, and we're going to try to animate this. I'm going to show the process for one head here, but obviously if you were doing the whole asset, you'd probably want to animate all of the heads. And the process is the same for any Mini. We're going to be doing a Hydra head here, but if you had a humanoid Mini, you would use the same process for doing that, or any other shape. It doesn't matter, the process is the same. Okay, so the basic steps in rigging and animating your Mini is you need to create a armature with a bone structure. The bone structure, just like in a real person, is what is going to be moving the mesh or the skin around, and that's how you're going to animate your Mini. You're going to move the bones, and the bones are going to cause your mesh to move. Once you have that, you need to apply weight painting, which basically tells when each bone moves, what part of the skin is going to move with that. Well, once you have that, then your Mini is ready to be animated, and you can then use the different bones on the timeline to move them around, and that's going to cause the animation. So let's get started. As we said, first we need to add a armature. So in object mode, add armature. The armature is basically the bone structure, or a placeholder for the bone structure that we're going to attach bones to. So when we added the armature, we can see that we've got one default bone here, and it is very big. So I'm going to toggle into edit mode. I'm going to make this a lot smaller, and I'm going to animate this head right here. So I am going to switch that into, okay, and then I'm going to move my bone, my beginning bone, to somewhere where the neck is. I'm having a little difficulty seeing which is which here. Okay. So this is our head here. So now that we've got the first bone kind of set correctly, we can use the extrude option, which is E on the keyboard, to make more bones. Now, if you were animating something like a humanoid, the bones are very obvious. If you were doing an arm, there is a bone for the upper arm, there is a bone for the lower arm. With something like a Hydra here, we don't know how many bones that creature had if it existed. So it's really up to you to decide. The more bones that you have, the more work you will do during your weight painting, but the smoother your animation can be. If you have very few bones, you can only bend the skin or the mesh at the bone joints. So if you have only a few bones, that animation is going to be more rough. If you have lots of bones, it's going to be more smoother, but more work. So I'm just going to go and make a few. Okay. Looks like I'm going to try to keep these bones kind of in the middle of the neck. Whoops. Apparently my computer is not really powerful enough for this particular model. Since we're not going to be using the automated weight mapping, this really shouldn't matter, but I like to keep it kind of at least roughly in the middle. Of the mesh that I'm planning to be moving around. Okay, so we got that. Now, when it comes here to the head, there's kind of a tongue in the way, so I'm not quite sure if we're going to be able to open and close the jaws, but let's give it a try. So in that case, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to extrude a bone for the top of the mouth and extrude a bone for the bottom of the mouth, or the jaw. Okay. Okay, that's probably good enough. Okay, so again, if you were doing this whole Hydra, you would now repeat that process for the other heads. I'm just going to demonstrate this with the one head so that this tutorial is not too long. So now we've got the armature. So now we need to do the relationship between the mesh and the armature. That's done by weight painting. So we are now going to toggle out of edit mode. In object mode, we are going to select our mesh and then our armature. And while on the main layout page, we're going to do Control P, and that's going to give us a parenting option. I am going to go with empty weight groups. I don't want Blender to try to figure out the weight painting automatically. You can try with automatic weights. If you do that, Blender is going to try to automatically assign the bones to the neighboring skin. In that case, it is very important to have your bones kind of in the middle of your mesh, as I was trying to do. But I'm going to want to do this manually. I don't want Blender to take a best guess at this. The automatic weights, depending on your mesh, sometimes it does a pretty good job and sometimes it does a horrible job. So I don't want to take that chance. I want some empty weight groups, and I'm going to do all that myself so I don't have to make corrections. I can just start from scratch. Okay, so now we can see that the mesh has disappeared, and if we open up the armature, we can see that the mesh is now under the armature. Okay, so we've got our bones here, and now we're going to be, for each of these bones, we're going to assign weight painting to say what part of the skin is affected by that bone. In Blender, weight painting goes from blue to red. So a pure blue area means that the bone does not affect that portion of the skin at all. A pure red area means that portion of the skin is 100% affected by the bone. Anything in between means it is partially affected. So with our mesh selected, I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to deselect everything. And now we can it's a little hard to see, but we can see our first bone here. So I am going to select the area around the first bone. So I could have gone straight into weight painting and started weight painting, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm only affecting certain parts of the mini when I'm weight painting. So I'm going to set up basically what's called a mask. I'm going to select the area that I want to be able to weight paint on and prevent the paint from hitting anything else. So that's what we're doing here. I've selected the area that the first bone is associated with. I want to deselect this. So this is the area that I'm going to be limiting my painting to. This is very important because what can happen is if you accidentally, while weight painting something, if you hit another portion of your mesh, then when you're animating, you'll get these weird artifacts like part of your mesh being pulled because a bone is affecting something that it shouldn't be. Okay, so I think I've got this. There, so let's do this. All right, so now with this area selected, I am going to go into weight paint mode. So right now we can see that because we chose empty weight groups, right now our mini is completely blue, meaning the bones have absolutely no effect on our mesh. I am going to select these two options here. Okay. Oh. Yeah. So, okay. So it looks like I just need the second option here. So with the second option selected here, now if I go to our bones, here are our bones. That was the first bone I created, so that should be over here. And now we can see that we have an option to assign the weight. So I want that bone to fully impact this portion of the mesh. So I'm just going to set this to 1. I'm going to click assign. Now if I go back to here, we can see now that this portion is red for bone, the first bone, and everything else is not affected. So now I can toggle back to edit mode, deselect that. Now here's our second bone. So we repeat the process. This is our second bone. I'm going to deselect. Deselect. All of that. Okay, so now our second bone is selected, and the same thing. We're just going to toggle back to weight paint mode. Switch over here to limit our interaction only to that section. That's bone 1. Assign. And now we've made that part red. So now if we toggle to bone 1, we can see it's affecting that section. Bone 1, our bone is that section. Bone 1 is affecting that section. And we're just going to repeat that process for the rest of the bones. is very important that when you're doing the assign, make sure that you have the right bone selected. Okay, well, I'm going to do this very quickly, and I'll come back when that's done. Okay, so I'm back. I did discover while I was doing this that it is actually not necessary to go to weight paint mode. Once in weight paint mode you have selected the vertex selection, when you're in edit mode and you got things selected, the under bones you'll still see the weight option there, so you can actually just stay in edit mode and select each bone and apply the weights. Okay, so I've gotten, if we look at our weight paint mode here, you will see that if I go back, turn this off. Yeah, okay, you can see that a little bit better. So there's bone 1, there's bone 2, there's bone 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I just stopped here because I want to show the jaw here. So really, it's just the same process. We're going to go back to edit mode. Deselect this. And now we're working on the upper. So I am going to now select the upper portion here of the head. And deselect. Okay, and same thing, we're going to apply the weights to that, and then we're going to do a similar thing to the bottom. So deselect, select, that. Okay. I think we selected a little too much there. Okay, so that's the bottom, and we're going to assign that to our 10th bone. So now we have assigned all the weight mapping for our various bones. So now we should be able to animate this mini, or at least the neck of this mini, and the jaws by animating those bones. Okay, so now that we've got it weight mapped, we can test the weight mapping by going into the pose mode. So we can go to the object mode for the mesh. Then we can go to the armature and select pose mode. Okay, I've already been playing around with this, and what we can see here is we definitely have a problem. There is a part of this mesh that when I'm rotating things, when I'm rotating the bones, we can see that this part of the mesh is not being affected at all. So, to go back to how the bones work, when we go to this bone, we had only this part of the neck being affected. What that means is that when we move this part of the neck, the rest of the chain will move, even though the weight mapping for it is not affected, because it is connected to the part of the neck that did move. So we don't need to, for like the beginning bone, map this whole thing as red. We're just saying we're moving this part of the neck, and wherever the end of this neck ends up, the rest of that will be oriented to match. So with something like this, what that is saying is we've set up these bones, but none of these bones affected this piece of the mesh. So when anything along the bone line is moved, you can see the rest of the skin, the mesh, is moving with it. But because this basically doesn't have influence from any bone, it's staying where it is. So we need to fix that. It looks like when we made the jaw, the upper jaw didn't grab the tongue, and the lower jaw didn't grab the tongue, so nothing's moving the tongue. So let's go back and see if we can fix that. Okay, so first we need to clear that pose. So we're going to select all here, and then pose, clear transform all. Okay, that brings us back to our initial pose. We're going to go back to object mode, select our mesh, and go to weight map. Okay, so let's have a look here. We zoom in on that, so we can see, yes, the tongue isn't being affected. So we'll add it to the lower jaw, I guess. So let's go to edit mode. Let's select that tongue. Now we don't want the teeth selected from the upper jaw, so we're going to clear those. Oh, I didn't go on both sides. Oh, I always forget about that. So let's clear the upper teeth so they're not affected. Okay, so we're affecting here some of the mouth, but that doesn't matter because we've already assigned that. So now, this is our bone 10. I'm going to assign. So if we go back to our weight painting now, yeah, we can see that bone 10 is now affecting the tongue. So let's see if that resolved that part of the mesh. So go back to object mode. Select the armature. Go into pose mode. Okay, and now if I grab something like this and start rotating, okay, we still got a tiny bit. Oh, it looks like the fangs from the upper mouth, a part of them has not been added. Okay, not a problem. Select all, pose clear, object mode, select mesh, go back to edit mode, deselect everything. Okay, so now we want to grab the best way to grab these, probably like that. So want to make sure that all of these fangs, oh, did it again, two-sided. Make sure you are using the two-sided, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, so there's the fangs right there. Okay, that's gotten though on this side. What about this side? This side still has a few that haven't been hit, so I'll do that. Again, the fact that we're selecting part of the upper mouth doesn't really matter because it's already part of that. We haven't affected anything else. Good. And now we need to make sure that we're on the right bone. 10 is for our lower jaw, 9 is for our upper jaw. Probably would have been a good idea to have named these bones so that it's more intuitive, but okay. Now we're going to assign that. So let's double check it in weight paint. So we can see now bone 9 is affecting the all the teeth. So hopefully that has resolved that issue. Armature pose mode. Okay, so I think we're good there, but we still have an issue around here. If I do this, we can see that there is a section of mesh that has a similar issue. Most likely when we did the effects for this section of the neck and effects for this section of the neck, a small portion was not affected. So we need to fix that up. So same process. Select all over here, pose, clear transform all, to get rid of the pose. Go back to object mode, select our mesh, and then we're going to do edit mode, select all. Actually, probably we're going to go into weight paint mode first and try to find where exactly the problem is. So I believe it is around this section right here. Yeah, this section right here. And let's go look at the next bone. Yeah, so we can see this section right there was completely skipped. So we need to add that in order to fix our issue. So I'm going to toggle into edit mode. Okay, so we'll make it part of the later bone. So okay. deselect that. Okay. I just want to double check it in white paint mode. Yeah, we want to add it to that one. So, assign. Okay, let's hope that fixed that problem. Okay, so back to armature, select the pose. Now, we looks like we've still got an issue there of something else. Hold on. Okay, so when I rotate this one, that looks fine. Okay, so here we've got a similar issue. So again, we have to go back through and fix that bone. Similar thing. I think what I've been doing is I've been making the area affected by the bone very small and not overlapping, and that's causing these things. If you actually wanted to do this completely smoothly, what you'd really be doing is the area for the bone should be completely red, and then there should be kind of a fall off on both edges going from red down to blue, so that the transition between the two bones is a little bit more smoother. If you did that, you would also probably not have these issues and have to go back and fix them up, because you'd, by the fact that you have that fall off, you'd lessen the chance that there's a section of mesh that isn't affected by any bone. Okay, let's see if I can fix this. So now that we have our weight mapping all done and corrected, we are ready to animate. So to animate, go onto your first frame. You can open up the summary a little bit to see your hierarchy. And then all we're going to do is we're going to set this toggle here to on, so it will automatically record keyframes that we change. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go on frame 1 and we're going to move each one of these bones to the desired position that we want the bones to be in. Then we're going to scroll to some other position, and again, this, depending on how many frames you skip, the smoother or harsher your animation will be. So now over here on a different frame, I'm going to go in and rotate each of these bones a little bit. Let's see if this jaw is going to work. Yeah, that looks like it actually is working. Okay, so now when we scroll through this, we can see that it is going through the animation. So when you set up your keyframes, obviously anything in between, Blender will automatically figure out the frames necessary to transition from your one keyframe to the other. That's standard Blender or animation technology. And obviously, if you wanted a complex animation, it wouldn't consist of two keyframes like we've done here. You'd have multiple keyframes to get your animation complete. Now, specific to Talespire, if you want to have multiple animations, you would just make one long animation, maybe put some empty frames in between, and it would be good to note down basically where one animation starts and one animation ends, so that you know the start and end keyframes. Then once you bring that long animation into Unity, you can set up separate animations and tell Unity what the start frame and end frame is, and that way you can break up the one long animation that you've created here in Blender into individual animations for use in Talespire. Same thing, if you want a looping animation, you would create one loop of it, and then in Unity, again, you would tell it the start frame, end frame, and tell it that it is a looping animation. And that's pretty well it. It's not rocket science. It can take a little bit of fiddling with the weight paint to get it right, to eliminate the artifacts that we saw earlier. But once you've done that, then your asset is rigged, and then animation is pretty simple. And the beauty is that once you rig it once, you don't need to rig it again. You can make all kinds of animations based on the rig that you've created. Obviously, each individual mini has to have its own rig. If you create a humanoid rig, you can probably reuse that by resizing it a little bit for many humanoid figures, but something like this would be very specific to this type of creature and probably does not have a lot of reuse for other minis. And that's about it.